2022 flew by really quickly and we tested a lot of great products, so let's see which ones made the top 10 list. And the first product to make the top 10 list is the Daytona DJ3000, which is sold at Harbor Freight. I compared 8 different jacks, with the least expensive one costing under $100 and the most expensive, the Snap-on, costing $1,000. Some of the jacks had less than great build quality, but the welds and the overall build quality on the Daytona were terrific. I built a tester to measure the maximum lifting capacity of each jack. The display on the left kept track of the maximum downward force applied to the jack handle, and the display on the right kept track of the jack's lifting capacity. With the Daytona, I had to apply 108.5 pounds of downward force on the jack handle to reach 3 tons or 6,000 pounds of lifting force with the jack. The Daytona made it to 6,855 pounds or 855 pounds higher than its 6,000 pound rating. After 5 minutes, the Daytona gave up 355 pounds, but is still holding more than its 6,000 pound rating. The Daytona also offers a second best lift height at 23¼ inches, or less than an inch difference compared to the Snap-on. As the jack is lifting the vehicle, it needs to reposition itself by rolling forward to stay under the vehicle. If the wheels don't move freely, there's a risk that the jack could slide out from under the vehicle. To test this, I placed a jack under the differential and I lifted both wheels off the ground. I then measured the amount of force it took to roll the jack with approximately 1,500 pounds of weight on the jack. Once again, the Daytona did very well in this test at only 88.5 pounds, which was good enough for a second place finish behind the Snap-on. Without a load, most of the jacks have a quick lift design and reach full height at under 10 pumps. With a load and with the limited range of motion for the handle, the Daytona tied the $1,000 Snap-on for first place at 28 pumps to reach full height. The Daytona also did very well on the low clearance test and supported the weight of a hay baler for 24 hours without a problem. When considering the price and performance, the Daytona is a terrific value and definitely deserves to make the top 10 list. And the 90-tooth Gearwrench ratchet easily earned its place in the top 10 list by outperforming many of the more expensive ratchets in just about every category. In the first test, the working arc swing test, the Gearwrench only needed 18 right to left passes within a 30-degree space to complete a rotation. It tied the Icon Pro for second place and just barely finished behind the 0-degree ratchet. A ratchet with a lot of back drag really makes removing and installing fasteners in tight spaces a challenge at times. If there's enough space, you can use your finger to apply some pressure on the side of the socket to allow the ratchet to advance, but that's not always an option. Once again, the Gearwrench performed very well on the back drag test at only 209 grams. Having both a low back drag and a great working arc swing is a great combination, and the Gearwrench once again finished in second place. A small ratchet head can really help when working in tight spaces, and the Gearwrench was the most compact ratchet in the lineup for both front to back dimensions and width. If you're trying to change directions with the directional lever with just one hand, having a directional lever that moves freely really helps. Once again, the Gearwrench finished in first place in this category. Since the Gearwrench is the most compact, I thought that the larger ratchets would offer a lot more strength. However, the Gearwrench still performed extremely well, finally breaking at 286.2 foot-pounds and finished in third place overall. The Gearwrench is very compact, has a great working arc swing, and a very low back drag, making it an amazing ratchet at only $34. It definitely deserves to be in the top 10 list. The Milwaukee Model 298120 battery-powered angle grinder is expensive at around $220, but seems to be very well worth the price. I placed the angle grinders on a tester that rolls nice and smoothly, and the angle grinders were leveled before the testing began. I used 5 pounds on a rope and pulley system to test the grinders, cutting through half-inch rebar. And the Milwaukee made 3 cuts through the rebar and had the fastest average cut speed of only 6.8 seconds, or a full second faster than the second place finisher. I also compared the angle grinders for blade stop speed. Over half the angle grinders needed over 3 seconds to stop the grinding disc, but the Milwaukee performed very well at only 1.56 seconds. In the second test, the grinders competed in the maximum torque test. They started off with 5 pounds of weight and a new grinding disc, and the Milwaukee easily handled 5, 10, 15, and even 20 pounds of force. With 20 pounds of force, it ground its way through the rebar in only 14.5 seconds. Only 4 of the 10 grinders were able to handle 20 pounds of force, and the Milwaukee was more than twice as fast as the second place finisher. Considering the power of the Milwaukee, it also performed very well for tool vibration. And the 60-volt DeWalt battery-powered string trimmer has proved to be very impressive against the competition. In the first test, the string trimmers are tested for maximum startup torque, and the DeWalt totally dominated the competition with a very impressive 73 inch-pounds. Some battery-powered tools react slowly to the trigger compared to gas-powered tools, and the DeWalt offers a very good tool reaction speed at only 0.1 seconds. Just like a gas trimmer, the DeWalt also reaches full RPM very quickly in under 1 second. String trimmer line capacity could save you from having to stop and restring the string trimmer before finishing the job. And the DeWalt tied the Echo for third place with a 20-foot string capacity. If the trimmer line hits a sharp object and it becomes too short, oftentimes it has to be dispensed by hand. And the DeWalt has a very well designed string trimmer head and easily dispense the trimmer line with a starting length of 3/4 of an inch in only 1.2 seconds. To really challenge the string trimmers, they had to cut 10 to 12 inch tall grass in an 8 by 24 foot area. Once again, the DeWalt came out on top with a very impressive 68 seconds or 12 seconds faster than the second place finisher. Several of the string trimmers performed very well in the showdown, and the DeWalt came out on top in several categories and earned an A rating in most performance categories. The 18-volt battery-powered Ryobi stapler is relatively affordable at around $80 and performs extremely well. And the Ryobi delivers almost immediate trigger response. Also, if you're tackling a project that requires quick tool speed, the Ryobi drove in 80 staples in only 29 seconds. Applying more downward force on top of the stapler can help the stapler drive in the staple deeper. And you don't have to put a lot of downward force using the Ryobi. And the $84 Ryobi finished in a very close second place behind the $210 Makita. Driving a staple through corner bead is extremely difficult unless the stapler packs a hard and quick punch. Only 3 staplers are able to tackle the corner bead, and the Ryobi is the least expensive of the 3 at $84. Driving a staple into fully cured oak is extremely challenging, but the Ryobi made very easy work of the oak and completely drove the staple into the wood. And composite lumber is even harder than oak and made most of the staplers look helpless. And once again, the Ryobi made very easy work of the composite wood and drove the staple into the lumber. Not bad for an $84 stapler. If you're like me, finding a decent tap and die set has been a challenge. Fortunately, the Craftsman performed extremely well against the competition. In the first test, the taps cut threads in 1/2 inch aluminum. After drilling all the holes and using a drill press to start the tap straight, I then used a torque adapter to measure the amount of torque required to tap the threads. And the Draper tap and die set has a different thread pitch than the Craftsman. So not including the Draper, the Craftsman tapped the threads with the least amount of force at only 45 inch-pounds. Tapping aluminum is a pretty easy task, but 1/4 inch 4140 is a lot harder. And the Craftsman is very sharp and durable and cut threads at 40 inch-pounds. Once again, the 24 thread pitch Draper came in on top, but the Craftsman came in on top for the taps with an 18 thread pitch. An even better indicator of tap performance is the bolt fit, and the Craftsman came in on top with only 1.23 millimeters of side-to-side movement. To test the dies, I used 5/16 low carbon steel rods. I used a drill along with the torque adapter to keep track of the torque required to rotate the steel rod. With a generous helping of tapping fluid, the Craftsman survived the entire test, only reaching a maximum torque of 110 foot-pounds. The amount of side-to-side movement on the freshly cut threads is pretty decent at only 2.11 millimeters. Only 5 of 9 brands, to include the Craftsman, survived the test. Once again, the Craftsman performed very well, finishing in second place behind the Irwin for side-to-side movement. A high-quality ratcheting combination wrench makes easy work of difficult nuts and bolts, and the SK Tools wrench easily made the top 10 list. In the first test, the working arc swing test, all of the wrenches had to work within a 40-degree space. Most of the wrenches needed 24 left-to-right passes for one full rotation, but the SK came out on top at only 15.3. A ratchet with a lot of back drag can really make removing a fastener in a tight space a pretty big challenge. And the SK performed very well in this test at only 288 grams of back drag for a third place finish in this category. The ratchets then competed for performance on a rusty fastener. About half the wrenches rounded off the bolt, while the other half outlasted the bolt. And the SK performed very well in this test, never losing grip and outlasting the bolt. The open-end wrench performance of the SK was very impressive in this category, finally breaking the bolt at 683.7 inch-pounds. Occasionally, tools get pushed to their limits, and the SK has the highest ratchet failure load of all the brands at a very impressive 531 pounds. Not only is the SK strong and durable, it also has the most compact open end with an outer diameter of 0.97 inches. The box end is also very compact at 0.98. So the SK has the best overall performance with an average finish of 3.67. Quality metal burr set is worth its weight in gold, and the Cle-line burrs earned a spot in the top 10. To compare the burrs, I first put together a tester that uses a rope and pulley system. I used 5 pounds of pulling force for each of the burrs. And the Cle-line burr ripped through the grade 8 bolt like a hot knife through butter, making the fastest cut out of 9 brands in only 9.8 seconds. The burr held up really well with only a very small amount of wear and tear. I used a drill press for the second test. I attached a wheel with the rope to the lever arms on the drill press to ensure the same amount of downward pressure was applied for each burr. I then attached 3.5 pounds of weight to the wheel. The SF5 burr is angled and has a little bit different design than the SA5, which was used in the first test. And once again, the Cle-line performed very well, creating a notch in the 5/16 inch mild steel in only 10.8 seconds. The Cle-line held up very well and finished in third place overall in this test. I then tested the burrs cutting through an Allen key, which is made of some very hard tool steel. And the Cle-line once again made very easy work of the very hard tool steel, making the cut in 27.1 seconds. And the teeth on the Cle-line held up very well. SE5 burrs are great for milling and contouring, and it really helps if the tip of the burr is properly designed for removing material. To test tooth geometry, sharpness, and chip removal, I used some AR400, which is some really hard steel. With 10 pounds of weight on the rope and the drill press wheel, the leverage advantage of the drill press applied about 70 pounds of downward force on the burrs. And several of the burrs barely left a mark in the very hard steel, but the Cle-line once again performed very well at 8.25 millimeters, which was enough to win this event. After testing 3 styles of burrs cutting from 3 different positions, the Cle-line came out on top with the best overall finish. If you want the best and you don't mind spending a lot of money, the snap-on torque wrench is a great tool. To test the torque wrenches, I bought this Proto torque wrench tester. It's the same unit that many calibration shops use since it provides accuracy to 1/10 of a foot-pound. The tester is set up the first peak mode, so the tester will measure and remember the exact amount of torque when you hear and feel the click. When it comes to torque wrenches, both accuracy and consistency is very important. In the first test at 50 foot-pounds, the Snap-on was the most consistent of all the brands with a standard deviation of only 0.34 foot-pounds. I also took 6 measurements for each brand at 100, 150, 200, and 250 foot-pounds. After a total of 30 measurements for each brand, only the Icon, SK Tools, and the Snap-on completed all 30 measurements within the plus or minus 4% torque tolerance range. For precision work such as torquing down a cylinder head, having the exact same amount of clamp load or downward pressure is extremely important. The Snap-on came in on top with a standard deviation of 0.51 foot-pounds. I also tested the torque wrenches in the counterclockwise direction. After testing the torque wrenches at 250, 150, and then 50 foot-pounds for a total of 18 measurements each, the Snap-on, DeWalt, and Proto were the only 3 brands that didn't have any measurements that fell outside the plus or minus 6% torque tolerance range. Of those 3 brands, the Snap-on came the closest to averaging 150 foot-pounds at 151.17. To test the durability of the torque wrenches, I cycled the torque wrenches 1,000 more times and tested them again for accuracy. Once again, the Snap-on stayed within the 4% range of accuracy on all the tests. The swing arc of a ratchet can make a huge difference. To provide realistic swing arc calculations, I measured the swing arc with a socket attached to a fastener. And the Snap-on came out on top at 15.6 degrees. While the Snap-on is very expensive, it came out on top and proved to be a very high-quality USA-made tool. And the final product to make the top 10 list is the Benchmade folding knife that's around $170. And right out of the box, the Benchmade is extremely sharp with a sharpness score of 155, the sharpest of all the knives tested. I then tested the amount of pressure it takes to unlock the knife blade. And the Benchmade is very easy on the fingers at only 356 grams of pressure and once again came out on top. The Benchmade also proved to have a very smooth opening blade requiring 0 grams of pressure and finished in a 2-way tie for first place with the Kaiser. Knife blades are made of different types of steel and some knife blades just don't hold an edge very well. To test blade edge durability, I placed the knives inside of a holder. I then placed 5 pounds of weight on top of the knives and made 100 back and forth passes across a bamboo cutting board. And the Benchmade only gave up 10 points, 165. After 100 passes across the cutting board, the Benchmade finished in 2nd place. I then sharpened all the knives using a 17-degree angle. After sharpening all the blades, I tested them one more time just to make sure that they were sharpened to nearly the same sharpness level. I then ran the knife blades across the bamboo cutting board 100 more times to see which knife blade maintained the best edge. And the Benchmade uses a very high-quality knife blade steel, losing only 10 sharpness points. And the Benchmade tied for 2nd place with a very impressive sharpness of 120. In the final test, I dropped the knives on the knife point. And the Benchmade survived the impact and still looks as good as new. While the Benchmade is expensive at around $170, it's a very well-made knife that's designed to stay sharp and is very durable. A big thank you to everyone that supported the channel in 2022 through any means possible. It really helps. All the videos in this channel are viewer suggested, so if you have a video idea, I hope you take time to leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. Please take care, and I look forward to next time.